So South Africa's public service is notorious for often being slow, having inefficient systems, and at times just giving unsatisfactory service. But the Public Service and Administration Department is hoping to change this. They've launched what they're calling the Integrated Public Service Month, which is aimed at reigniting the Batho Pele principles. The department is hoping to ensure that public servants are service-orientated. Let's unpack this now. Bring in Yoliswa Makhasi, who is the Director General in this department. She joins us via our video link this morning. DG, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you so much indeed for making time to speak to us. You know, the Batho Pele initiative, let's call it, was first launched back in 1997. And I'm willing to say you don't have to look far and wide to find South Africans who believe that the principles under this initiative are still a long way from being implemented across various sectors. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think that, firstly, good morning, Ayanda, and to those who are listening to the program. I just think that part of the reasons is that what we did long ago was to release Batho Pele principles and to have the whole Batho Pele program, but we didn't go further to release the service standards that are required in the various departments. So we left a lot of that work to be done at the level of departments, and we have now, with the Batho Pele Revitalized Strategy, which was approved by Cabinet, we have seen the need to look at development of Batho Pele service standards. So it's not just the principles alone, it's not just the campaign alone, but the campaign is supported by implementation within the departments, and we must hold each other accountable through the service standards that we are putting in place. Service standards as simple as waiting times, for instance, in departments in service delivery like departments of Home Affairs and etc., and trying as much as possible to move some of our services into electronic platforms so that we give realization to the idea of e-government. I mean, many of our departments have started around that, like Home Affairs. You can go to the bank and other partners and apply for passports and for IDs, etc. But those who still have to go to the offices, they don't have to wait for the whole day for services.
Yeah. In case, someone watching is not necessarily accustomed to this, initiative, Batho Pele means people first in Sesotho, of course. And some of the values underneath this initiative are around courtesy, ensuring there's access, value for money, openness and transparency. For instance, in just some of the healthcare systems in our country, many people will tell you they haven't experienced this in years, if ever. Let me ask you this. Do you reckon you have the right people in those posts to carry out these principles?
We employ in the public service around 1.2 million people. And we have stringent recruitment mechanisms in the public service in terms of our norms and standards. And we do get reports sometimes that at the implementation levels at departments, some of these stringent recruitment mechanisms are not followed. And in such cases, employees do report matters to entities like the Public Service Commission and etc. for investigation. But let me tell you that a majority of our public servants are very dedicated in their roles and responsibilities. Of course, it's such a large number of people, so there are those who may not be conducting themselves the way that is required. But we have seen a majority of our public servants really at work and delivering services, even during the hardest times that we've been faced with as a country, such as COVID. So I would say that we have a large number of public servants who are committed to do their work and who on a daily basis are guided by the principles of the Constitution and the values that are in Chapter 10 of the Constitution, as well as our Batho Pele principles.
Yeah. I don't see you being able to revitalize Batho Pele without being able to properly professionalize the public service, which is, another project that had been spoken about for the past few months, if not for longer than that. How far do you reckon government is with getting that right? Because in my mind, until you sort out that issue, everything else you try to implement with the hopes of improving service delivery is going to fall by the wayside, if not become completely unsuccessful.
You are correct, Ayanda. We have to deal with the issue of professionalization of the public service. We have done so much work on this. The framework now is at the level of Cabinet. We are waiting for Cabinet to engage and hopefully to approve any day so that we can roll out a number of ideas that are in the framework, in the proposals that are being put in place there. And certainly, when you professionalize, you have to look at the issue of culture in the public service. You have to look at the issue of value for money. In terms of people that we bring in the capital, in the public service. You have to look at the human capital strategy. There's just so much of this work that we are doing currently. We are also reviewing our regulations, which is basically the norms and standards that are governing public service, to ensure that they are aligned with the changes that we want to see taking place into the future. So there's so much work that we are doing currently, and we are hoping that within the current quarter, Cabinet will hopefully process and approve the framework, because it is a springboard in terms of the work that we want to do within the public service in changing a number of things.
Yeah. South Africa is a very special place in many ways, but one of those ways is that no matter where you go in the world, you often find people from this country who are doing amazing things wherever they are further afield. And in some discussions with those individuals, when you ask them why they're not in this country, why they're not back home, doing the great work that they do here in order to benefit our communities, they often tell you that the mess in the public service often takes away from the good work that they'll be able to do. In other words, we are losing some of the best in the world, sometimes it feels, to other countries because of our internal issues. What am I referring to? Corruption, the inefficiencies, and the list really does go on. The efforts at fixing those things so that we can attract these people back in the country, how much attention is that getting?
Well, I'm sure, you've seen so much efforts that are being put to deal with issues such as corruption in the country. And as the Department of Public Service and Administration, through our Technical Advisory Unit, we are part of these efforts just in terms of holding public servants accountable. The processes sometimes take longer, but we are a constitutional democracy, and therefore we have to be guided by the principles of our constitution in how we deal with these matters. I know sometimes that people complain that people are on suspension longer and people are getting paid while they're staying at home longer. But the point is, there are the current legislative architecture that we have as a country on labor relations matters requires that we follow certain steps, and we have to follow those particular steps as part of our constitutional democracy. And I do think that we shouldn't give up. And look, we're a free country. So those people who want to explore opportunities abroad, they cannot be stopped. But those who still believe being in the public service is a calling first and foremost. So for those of us who have stayed longer in the public service, it's because we are called into this work, we are called to serve, and we want to make a difference in the lives of people in South Africa, especially those who may not necessarily have many alternatives but do depend on public services. So this campaign is really, this Batho Pele campaign and program is really reminding public servants of their roles and responsibility to serve, but also raising our levels of consciousness around how we're expected to work with members of the communities and how we're expected to serve, because as public servants, we are there to serve the communities. We are not there to serve ourselves.
Yeah. One of the principles under Batho Pele is around redress, and a part of what that entails is that if somebody is receiving a service within the public sector and is not happy with that, they are entitled to redress. Part of that redress, we are told, involves the public servant themselves apologizing to the person who's meant to be receiving the service. My question is twofold. One, do the public servants know this? And secondly, have you ever witnessed something like that taking place, where somebody has received service that they're not happy with, for instance, in a hospital, and a nurse immediately turns around to apologize to them? In other words, are these issues or principles trickling down to places where it matters?
So one of the things that we do is we actually insist that public servants, especially those at the coalface of service delivery, must wear their name tags, because when you are getting a service from an official at the hospital, from an official at Home Affairs, from an official who is a police officer, and etc., you should be able to identify them, so that if they have not given you a good service, you are able to report. There are toll-free lines and other mechanisms that we have, including the heads of offices where these services are provided. As a member of the community, you have a right to complain. And I've done this personally a lot in my other roles as a client of the public services, to just be able to go to a police station and say to whoever is in charge that I'm not happy about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of the service. And the station manager knows what they need to do in respect to that. But it's true that our people don't complain a lot, and sometimes they accept bad services without complaining because they want to keep relations, because they are also afraid of being victimized when they complain. But there's no one who has a right to do so. We have intervened at times when we get complaints through our channels. We intervene and we try and reach out to the people and ensure that they still get those services when an apology is due and apology is given in respect to that.
I'll put it to you, DG. Many people don't complain, not because they don't want to ruin relations, but they know that typically it doesn't go anywhere outside of their complaint. Then you're right, they get victimized instead. But I wouldn't be forgiven, DG, if I don't ask you this. I mean, so much has been said this week about the MEC in Limpopo and the comments she made to a Zimbabwean national at Bilabila Hospital earlier on. We're not quite sure when the incident itself happened. But, I mean, that instance, as an example, do you reckon that is Batho Pele in action?
What I'm happy about with that incident is that the people who needed to get a service did get the service that they required. I will not comment on the views that were shared by the MEC, etc. But what is important is that no one was turned back from service, even though some of them are regarded as illegal in South Africa, but they were still able to access the service, and hopefully we were able to contribute in saving lives as the public service in South Africa. Thank you.
All right, DG, thanks very much indeed. You clearly don't want any follow-up questions, but the clock is against us anyway. So thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. The Public Service and Administration Director General there, Yoliswa Makhasi. I appreciate your time on the AM report.